Hello students, welcome to this present segment. Now in the previous segment we had introduced on a modern element in literature by Matthew Arnold. We had come to know what it means over there in the introductory part by Hellenism and Hebraism. We have gone through the story with which he begins, where he talks about, or where he actually wants to demonstrate what he means by moral deliverance, and we'll call it spiritual deliverance instead. Of course, as I've told you, in Victorian England there was little difference in meaning and signification between the two. And in this present segment, as I said, we'll see what he actually wants to mean by what he considers to be a very essential part of civilization, intellectual deliverance. We'll start reading from the beginning of the third paragraph. It's the fourth one. An intellectual deliverance is a peculiar demand of those ages which are called modern, and this is how he relates the idea of modernism to intellectual deliverance. And those nations are said to be imbued with the modern spirit, most eminently in which the demand for such a deliverance has been made with most zeal and satisfied with most completeness. Still now he doesn't tell us what it consists in, but he opines that it is a very important constituent of modernism. Unless an age has gone through intellectual deliverance, it cannot call itself a modern age. Let's come to the last line of this paragraph. Of all studies, it asks above all the question, how far they can contribute to this deliverance. A study, a research, or whatever kind of intellectual exercise we engage in, they are of no value unless it leads to intellectual deliverance, according to Arnold, in some way or the other. And what is his proposal? That comes in the very next one. Rather, his proposition, to use the kind of language you use today, rather his hypothesis, and it comes at the last few lines of the next paragraph. The literature of ancient Greece is, even for modern times, a mighty agent of intellectual deliverance. Even for modern times, therefore an object of an indestructible interest. You can see a reflection of the Hellenism that he talks about and we explained in the previous segment. The literature of ancient Greece is even for modern times a mighty agent of intellectual deliverance. So it's not only relevant to their times, it's important to us in that it can bring about, if you study the literature of ancient Greece, if we study Hellenistic literature, it can bring about intellectual deliverance even to our time. The next paragraph is also very important, but first let us ask ourselves why the demand for an intellectual deliverance arises in such an age as the present. Why do we need intellectual deliverance? Because, as he feels, and as he very truly points out, he was living in a very mobile age, so to say. What he calls copious and complex present. Okay, it was a kind of an extremely turbulent phase of life. A time, say, in contemporary England, Victorian age. On the one hand, there was, the huge advancement in technology, which again was to some extent dubious because of the over-urbanization and the condition of England, so to say, particularly the condition of London, which as a kind of a urban metropolis, as it developed into a urban metropolis, it deteriorated more and more along the moral, among the environmental scale, so to say. And then there is the even more dubious issue of imperialism and colonialism, which was going on in a rampant way. As you know, India became a colony a little earlier, but it became a part of the British Empire during the Victorian period. And then there was also this, what we commonly know as a conflict between doubt and faith, something to which he deeply reacted in Dover Beach, his poem. So you see, it's a kind of a very copious and complex present. The development of natural sciences makes the entire, even from the scientific philosophical angle, the entire world, the entire universe becomes much more complex than it was thought to be before. So, and not only he is talking about the copious and complex present, but also the copious and complex past. And in order to comprehend the age, in order to make some meaning to this age, in order to make out what it means, a comprehension is a very important word that he uses over here. A kind of the deliverance consists in man's comprehension of the present and past. It's literature that will cause the deliverance. And what is this deliverance? How would you know that he has been delivered? When he will be able to comprehend the copious and complex present in the context of the copious and complex past. It begins when our mind begins to enter into possession of the general ideas in which the law of this vast multitude of facts. Again, some general ideas which, bring together the wayward, the diverging things that are happening. Again, a kind of a, you can see a kind of a Hellenism working over here, a kind of a shift from the multiple to the unitary, so to say. Hellenism applied this in the philosophical walk of life. And this is for Arnold not only philosophical but also historical, spiritual and moral. It is perfect when we have acquired the last part of this paragraph. It is perfect when we have acquired the harmonious acquiescence of mind which we feel in contemplating a grand spectacle that is intelligible to us. When we have lost that impatient irritation of mind which we feel in presence of an immense, moving, confused spectacle, which while it perpetually excites our curiosity, perpetually baffles our comprehension. So as long as we are unable to understand this immense, moving, confused spectacle, as long as we are unable to understand this life around us, as long as we are unable to understand what is going on around, then we are perplexed, we are baffled. And when we have that, when we gain that harmonious understanding, we can say that we have been intellectually delivered. Okay? This then is what distinguishes certain epochs. So two aspects that form a kind of a distinguishing feature to this epoch. One, an epoch in human history which is intellectually delivered. On the one hand, the presence of a significant spectacle to contemplate. On the other hand, the desire to find the true point of view from which to contemplate the spectacle. The age must be a significant one, something that is tremendous, something that is hugely complex, something that is worth contemplating, and at the same time there must be a particular perspective, a perspective from which this has to be contemplated. These are the two things necessary for intellectual deliverance. Now, you can see this perspective, needless to say, for a Hellenistic believer like Arnold, a kind of a believer in Hellenism like Arnold, it would be the individualistic perspective, or even more precisely, the humanistic perspective. He who has found this point of view, it's the effort of an individual once again, and these are the places where Hellenism lies in this essay. He who has found that point of view, he who adequately comprehends his spectacle, has risen to the comprehension of his age, who is standing from that perspective when he understands his age, he who communicates that point of view to his age. And it is not only a question of understanding, finding the right perspective and comprehending, but it is also a question of communication and interpretation. He who interprets to it that spectacle is one of his age's intellectual deliverers. We are reminded of the Vedic idea of Vedic authorship in Plato's Ion. Plato calls the poet a prophet, a seer. Of course, one very important philosophical constituent of Hellenism was Platonism. But you can see over here that again, he does not use, because he is so opposed to Hebraism, he does not use the word Messiah, or he does not use the word prophet over here. But what he means is that one who is able to comprehend his age from the intellectual point of view. He is able to find the position from which to comprehend, and not only do that, but also to communicate his comprehension to his time, is the intellectual deliverer of the age. And as we proceed further, we'll find that he finds those intellectual deliverers in the literature, in the literary figures of ancient Greece. And what is this spectacle? The spectacle consists of, let's come to the next paragraph, second line. The facts consist of the events, the institutions, the sciences, the arts, the literatures in which human life has manifested itself up to the present time. The spectacle is the collective life of humanity. It cannot exclude anything. Another element of Hellenism is all-inclusive, the tendency to include everything, the tendency to bring inside everything. I have told you that it's a combination of many schools of thought. And that is also being reflected. You take different ideas, not only different ideas, but they are here the different aspects of life, the events, the institutions, the sciences, the arts, the literatures. Whatever creative field, whatever be the creative field in which humanity manifests itself. Okay? The spectacle is the collective life of humanity, and everywhere there is a connection, everywhere there is an illustration. No single event, no single literature, this part is very important. No single event, no single literature is adequately comprehended except in its relation to other events, to other literatures. Okay? So unless we compare one literature to the other, we won't get the real locus standi, the place where it actually stands. We can't get its true value, and therefore we'll be farther from the intellectual deliverance we seek through that piece of literature. So there has to be some connection. One thing has to be read in connection to the others, and also in comparisons. and with which the particular, almost a motto with which he ends this paragraph with a quote, obviously, but just before the quote comes the motto, "We must compare." He's quoting the Chancellor of Cambridge, who was speaking in Manchester. We must compare. Arnold is considered to be one of the first comparatists, and this essay is considered to be one of the earliest theoretical essays dealing with comparative literature. Now, today, comparative literature is a very important stream of literary study, and you can see how Arnold understood its importance right in the Victorian period, which was to him one of the most momentous periods in human history. Now we have come to the end of the time segment. In the next segment, we'll see what this comparison consists of. Thank you.